Well, hey, welcome to the sixth and final week of Growing Through Disruption, our series where we are looking at ways to dive deeper into relationship with God, even while you're stuck at home or while normal life has been disrupted. Because this has been the truth for us that we all have to go through this disruption, but we actually get the choice to grow through this disruption. So that's why we've titled it like this. And so our encouragement every single week has been that we would all find a way to put ourselves in God's way every day. And so we've been going through this book called Spiritual Disciplines for the Christian Life that lists a lot of great different practices that can help us get into the presence of God. And I thought it'd be worth mentioning here that there are more than these 6 things I've talked about, that there are other disciplines, but the ones that are better for working out with other people around. Disciplines like worship and serving and evangelism. These are all things that also bring us much closer to God, but they kind of necessitate somebody else being around. So we've chosen to focus on some of these disciplines that you need to get alone to do. Things like prayer, Bible reading, fasting, journaling. And now for this 6th one, the final one, we're going to talk about learning. Learning as a discipline that helps us get closer to Jesus. And so this will be our final one that we do. And so we thought we would wrap it up with this one, learning. Now, learning as a spiritual discipline is probably something that a lot of people would say doesn't feel spiritual, but sure feels like discipline to actually learn and to commit ourselves to study. I mean, a lot of us, we got out of school and we don't go back for anything. We are glad that our days of test taking and books are over. And so you may think about it this way. I never really liked school in the first place, so I sure don't want church to feel like school. And I don't want my personal relationship with Jesus to feel like school. Like, shouldn't it be a little more organic than that? Shouldn't it be a little more earthy than that, and touchy-feely than school? That's so dry and boring. And so I'd ask you this question. Do you see knowledge and passion as opposites? Is it possible to be both knowledgeable and passionate about something? Now, we know it's true, and maybe we're afraid of the extremes, that if we are overly knowledgeable, things can just become intellectual and we lose the passion and the heart. That maybe there is a point where we can study so much that we lose the beating heart passion of something. It's also true, though, that we can be really passionate about something without knowing much about it. We can just feel very strongly about it. So you might see knowledge and passion as opposites, that especially when it comes to Jesus and your relationship, you can choose to be more knowledgeable or you can choose to be more passionate, or you might naturally just find yourselves on one of those two ends of the spectrum. But let me offer you this. Can you be knowledgeable about something and then be more passionate about it because you're knowledgeable? So take, for instance, the shirt I am wearing. If you know Marvel movies, this is the Captain America logo. And I know lots of kids and lots of men are extremely passionate about Marvel and Marvel movies, and they become extremely knowledgeable about them. So I like these movies, my sons like these movies, and sometimes we get into nerdy arguments about our different pieces of knowledge. Well, I know this, I heard that, I heard this. And our passion leads into more knowledge. And in fact, I think the more that you know, the more excited you get when something is coming out. Let's use another example. As a lot of boys grow into men, they become passionate about sports. This is the Seattle Mariners. Now, I know lots of men who their passion for sports has led them into learning more about sports. I mean, I only learned how to add by sevens when I started watching football, 7, 14, 21. I learned about percentages, learning about batting averages. Stats for baseball drew me into knowledge. And now, especially if you do any kind of fantasy sports, fantasy baseball, fantasy football, you dig so deep into the knowledge that you care so much more now than you did before. So passion and knowledge can actually help one another out. The more you learn about something, the more you can care about it. And the more you care about something, the more you want to learn. So we're going to use that paradigm as we think about our relationship with Jesus. As much as we may push away from schoolwork and getting back to school otherwise, let me encourage you to take steps towards Jesus in this area of learning. Not just sitting in church and hearing sermons, but for yourself, studying and learning. Because here's what's true about a balanced Christian. A balanced Christian has both a full heart and a full head. They are not in conflict with each other. They don't have to be. That you have a full heart and a full head. Let me say it this way, that the same fire that gives us light also gives us heat. So that fire of your relationship with Jesus should give you heat and passion to warm your heart, but should give you light to see the rest of the world more clearly. And the more that you understand, the deeper your passion goes, and on and on. If you look at the book of Proverbs, it speaks over and over again about the wise, things that the wise do, or things to do to become wise. So I just pulled out one passage. Proverbs chapter 18, verse 15 says, "The heart of the discerning acquires knowledge." The heart acquires knowledge, and the ears of the wise seek it out. The heart acquires knowledge, and the ears seek it out. So here I would say it this way. If you want to become wise, like the book of Proverbs says, you need to develop a quote-unquote yearning for learning. You may have no desire to learn. You may have every desire to push new info away and just love Jesus with your heart and with your emotions. And I'd say that's an awesome place to start. But let me tell you that if you love Jesus, you should want to learn something more about him and learning about life with him. So there should be a developing yearning for learning. Doesn't mean we'll ever be perfect or know it all, but that continual desire to learn more or to go a step deeper is a powerful indicator of a passionate relationship with Jesus. I think it's ironic that we live in what's called the information age, where they say the total amount of information known or created is doubling. I think at this point, every 18 months, all the information in the world is doubling. And yet, in the midst of all that information we have, we actually praise a lot of other things. If you think back to your days in school, if you had the choice, would you have rather been the smartest kid in school or the most athletic? Chances are most of us would have picked the most athletic or the best looking. We know it's important to be smart, but boy, it sure goes a long way to be good at sports or to be good looking or to just be funny and be liked by people. And so that's how we operate as humans, that we like people, that we can get along with, and we often praise in people stuff that we wish was true in us, maybe an athletic ability. And although we never minimize how good it is to be smart, we think that's good for them. That's good for somebody else to be smart. That's not necessarily the place for me. But Romans would tell us in chapter 12, verse 2, the book of Romans, Paul would say, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." That our mind being renewed actually transforms our soul. Here's one truth. There is nobody who's ever been changed by an unread Bible sitting on the shelf. You got to open it and you got to read it. And so you've got to learn in order to grow. You've got to learn for your mind to be transformed and to change your heart and soul. That's a part of it. So let's talk about some quick how-tos. How to get better at learning, especially if it's just not something you enjoy doing already. Number one, audiobooks. So many people I know have gotten into reading by listening, and that totally counts. To find books on the Christian life, on Scripture and Scripture itself, and to listen to it as you drive, to listen to it as you work, to listen to podcasts. Use your ears to learn. The book of Proverbs says that. The ears of the wise seek out wisdom. So don't pretend that if you don't like reading a book that you can't learn and you should do other things. Use your ears. Number two, pick the brains of godly people who are further ahead than you. This might mean that if you're a new Christian, find somebody who's 10 or 15 years in as a follower of Christ. If you're a Christian parent, you might have little kids, you might ask a parent of teenagers how they're doing it. If you've got teenagers, you might ask somebody whose kids are already adults how they're living life. If you're in middle age, you might talk to some of the people in your church who are already retired or near retirement, asking them just how they are walking through life. People have pearls of wisdom to give out, but they usually need to be asked. So conversation, that's a way of learning from the lives of others. And then thirdly, I would say this, find a small block of time in your day and try some reading. Try finding some Christian books. If you don't have any other books, the Bible, of course, is the best place to start, but I encourage you to find some other things to supplement that. You'd be really surprised at what 20 minutes of time every day can add up to over days and weeks and months and years, where it can get you just 20 minutes at a time. That might be first thing in the morning. For me, I like reading right before bed. I might read the last 20, 30, 40 minutes before I go to sleep. Kind of actually calms me down, gets me in a place ready to sleep. But you'd be surprised how far you can get just getting a little bit at a time. A few years ago, I asked this question of myself: how many books could I read in a year? What would be a good rhythm instead of just reading sporadically? And I said one year for New Year's, what if I tried reading 2 books every month? Just giving it a try, giving that little self-imposed deadline, see what I could do. And I found that at the end of the year, I read 24 books, the next year 25, and this year I'm tracking a little bit ahead of where I was before. And all of that was just a practice of a few minutes at the end of the day, not every day, but doing my best to just keep reading, just keep finding books to read and reading, and just amazed at how that knowledge draws me in to passion with Jesus. So actually, this book that we've been going through, Spiritual Disciplines for the Christian Life, I just finished it today for the second time. I read it in college some 15 years ago, but as we've been going through this process, going through this study, I've been reading this book, and I finished it today. I crossed that off my list. That's part of my learning. Statistics would tell us that the average American reads less than a book a year. So like the average person in America tries to read a book and stops somewhere in the middle. So maybe you've done more than that. Maybe you've done even less than that. Maybe you haven't even tried to read a book. But on average, if you could read 1 book in 12 months, you'd be ahead of average. Can I encourage you? Don't just settle for being average. I mean, understand that most people are in the same boat as you, that reading books is hard, takes some time, and takes some perseverance, and might just not be enjoyable at first. But if you can push through and just finish 1 in a year, you're already above average. So let me encourage you to persevere in these disciplines, all of these things: prayer, Bible reading, fasting, journaling, and learning, taking time to invest in your relationship with Jesus, and just finding these little ways to connect with Jesus. It's not important how far you get or how much you get, but just making the steps forward each day. You'll be amazed at how your heart is changed. So I'll finish with what we say every single week, that we want you to find a way to put yourself in God's way every day. And that's true in the middle of a quarantine, in the middle of stay at home, and that's true even when you have all the options available in life, when every store is open and everything in your life is going back to the crazy busyness that it was before. You still have the option to grow by putting yourself in God's way every day. We love you. God bless you, and may God's peace go with you as you learn to grow in your relationship with Him.